The Dearborn Independent, February 19, 1921, number 17. Mr. Ford's page. The meanest kind of thief is the man who steals another's good judgment by flattering him. Some people are so susceptible to praise that, like stroked kittens, they just lie down and roll over whenever they are offered a compliment. The difference between the flatterer and a friend is that the former wants to buy something with pleasant words, and the latter wants to share his mind with you. There has been altogether too much dependence on smooth talk in business. If money had depreciated in value as much as words have, there would be very little business done. A man's word of praise ought to be as sound and as good as his word of promise, and that ought to be as good as his bond. The only thing that justifies a compliment these days is that it be detached from any form of self-seeking. Among the dishonest ways of getting along is the practice of working on the self-esteem of men by praising them to such a point that they feel inclined to favor you. Some crooks chloroform their victims to rob them. Others just suffocate their good judgment with praise. The first method has at least the virtue of directness. The second, even at its best, is suspiciously on the other side of frankness. We have developed in this country a habit which must be modified by honesty, and that is the habit of backslapping and indiscriminate boosting, the glad hand and the oily compliment. These never did go down with men of hard horse sense, but they had a considerable and pernicious influence on young men, because young men naturally thought that this was the standard way to do things. Now this is a situation which more mature businessmen have observed with something of impatience and something of misgiving. It must not be assumed, however, that they regretted to see a more human tone come in business relations, nor must it be assumed that they protest because their ideal of a businessman is one who is strong as steel and just as cold, who cannot be bent nor even melted except in the hottest fires. There is just the danger that returning from the orgy of backslapping and artificial good fellowship which has marked the last few years, the era in which the smooth person got by, we shall revert to the opposite extreme of coldness and brutality. Not at all. Extremes are always to be avoided. But whatever the attitude, sincerity is desirable about all things. And it is just the lack of sincerity which made so much of this praise-mongering nauseating to plain men. There are two great barriers to the free intercourse of minds, to absolute transparency of conduct, and they are, first, a designing attitude toward another, and second, that which the designing attitude breeds, namely, suspicion in the mind of the man against whom the design is laid. They are both unwholesome mentally and disruptive socially. They constitute the major part of the silent warfare of life. Now, all men like praise. If a man says he doesn't, he should examine himself again. He may not like to be praised to his face. He may be irritated by the fawning form in which praise is offered him. He may be angered by his knowledge that the offered praise is insincere and has an ulterior motive. He may be sickened by the hollowness of it. A man who had done something very well was once pained by the praise he received. He said, "They all praised me for the wrong thing." They had not considered his work enough to see the real point in it. And what he wanted was not the sticky sweetness of personal compliments, but discriminating and appreciative consideration of his work. All men like their good work to be praised, but that is quite a different thing. There is something normal and wholesome about friends being able to meet frankly in consideration of a piece of work. So, if a man says he dislikes praise, he must define what he means. When a man is able to praise his own work to himself, to behold the work of his hand and take pleasure in it, he is taking praise, just as much as if he eagerly drank in compliments spoken by another. Now, the evil of life consists in all these wholesome and pleasurable sensibilities being misused to selfish ends. No matter what department of human nature you look into, the evil you see comes from selfish misuse, and so men have brought in evil through the gate of praise. If you see that a man's weakness is flattery, and you take advantage of that to manipulate his judgment and his will, you are following precisely the same tactics as the man who sees another's purse conveniently exposed and takes it, If you see that a man is built of such malleable material that a friendly, complimentary advance disarms him and lays him open to your power, and you deliberately thus disarm him for the accomplishment of your design, whatever it may be, good or bad, you are working along a dangerous line. You are exalting yourself to a place which no human being is entitled to assume toward another for reasons of profit. It is a serious thing to descend to this kind of strategy or trickery, even for the best purposes. No one takes these tactics without sacrificing a great deal of sincerity, and besides, they are not necessary. There is nothing that this sort of strategy can accomplish that frankness, honesty of purpose, and even blunt truthfulness of statement cannot better accomplish. The straight, open way is healthier for the mind of the man who is making the advance, and it cements a better relation with the man who is being advanced upon. Now, inasmuch as there are still in the world many holdovers from the last regime who still trust in the strategy of the tongue, it is just as well that young men, especially young businessmen, should be on their guard. Instinctively, the majority of them are. There is something inside the normal human being, a sort of spiritual submarine detector, which warns of the approach of hollow words. Many lies are told, very few lies get across. Many deceptions are planned, comparatively few succeed. The interior detector sounds an alarm in most people. They are protected. But there is among young men a native kindness which prevents them from revealing the impostor to himself. When it is said that very few lies get across, that is true. But the liar does not know it. People whose detector warns them do not always tell him what they think. They sometimes act as if they believe the lie. And so, insincerity creeps in from the other side too. The young businessman will more fully trust the older man who does not flatter him and who does not follow his flattery with presumptions on the young man's favor. Thousands of people are that way. They pay a compliment and they believe that constitutes an admission ticket to special privileges. Deny them the privilege and they go away saying quite opposite things about the person they hope to work. It is the meanest kind of cadging, this passing of compliments, and then waiting until the complimented man is so committed by the reception of the praises that he cannot say no without embarrassment. That is the meanest kind of trickery. But young men who have been tricked that way soon learn the technique of it and are on their guard. A certain delicacy of character would teach the self-seeking person that it is a vast presumption to offer praise to anyone, and the only consideration that can justify it is its sincerity and unselfishness. Otherwise, it is a profanation of one of the finest forms of human relationship. If a young man in business is wise, he will pay less attention to those who flatter his self-esteem and more to those who stir his energies. A good, well-balanced critic who is looking to the success of the work and not to the feelings of the men who may be at the head of it is the best kind of friend for a young businessman to have. And if the young businessman is keen, he will see that such a one's interest and attention is the most real, yet the most delicate form of friendship and praise. It is based on frankness, and it will be there, though failure and unfavorable criticism overwhelm the project. Divide between your flatterers and your friends, and you already have a chart by which to sail.